The vampires, the demons, and the forces of darkness, these are the groups mentioned in the opening line of the first season, which make up the enemy of the Slayer. Today, we're looking at the first one, the vampire. In the previous video, we traced the origins of the vampire, from real-world folklore to the old ones of the Buffyverse, and examined what a vampire is, the demon within, their physiology, powers, weaknesses, and the structures they form to survive. In this second part, we're moving outward, away from the biology of the monster and toward its place in the world. We'll look at how humanity unknowingly coexists with vampires, the human groups that are aware of the supernatural world, how the Slayer is perceived from the other side of the hunt, and finally, what happens when a vampire dies, and on rare occasions when death isn't quite final. As usual, we're tackling events across the shows Buffy and Angel, as well as the expanded universe, so be cautious if you're sensitive to spoilers. So, grab a snack, get comfy, and enjoy as we dig into further lore regarding these creatures of the night. Let's get started. For a town sitting on a literal hellmouth, Sunnydale is remarkably good at pretending nothing is wrong. The citizens go about their lives surrounded by high mortality rates, mysterious disappearances, and 12 cemeteries which have very busy funeral schedules, and yet the average person chalks it all up to animal attacks or gangs on PCP. Of course, this isn't solely applicable to Sunnydale, as demons and monsters in the series clearly inhabit the rest of the world too. The Buffyverse treats this willful blindness almost as another supernatural law. It's not that humans can't see what's happening, it's almost like they won't. Denial seems to be part of the ecosystem. The Sunnydale townsfolk exist in a kind of magical complacency, a collective fog that keeps the masquerade intact. Whether this is natural human self-deception or a subtle side effect of hellmouth energy, the result is the same. Vampires walk among the living without ever truly being seen. There are exceptions, of course. The Watchers Council, for one, have known of vampires and demons since early human civilization. They study them, catalogue them, and, through the Slayers, fight back to protect the living. But for the rest of the world, the awareness remains fractured. From the show, we can gather that religious orders know fragments of the truth. Underground demon hunters operate in secret, like Daniel Holtz and Charles Gunn. The Initiative, a government project introduced in Buffy's 4th season, represents one of the rare attempts by official government institutions to confront the vampire and demon threat head-on. Ironically, they managed to be nearly as monstrous as the creatures they study, with the creation of Adam being an obvious failure. Outside of those organisations, human awareness is sketchy at best. Most people simply rationalise what they can't explain. The brain prefers logic to horror. A shadow with glowing eyes becomes a trick of the light. The bite marks on a body are blamed on wild dogs. Even law enforcement seems complicit, papering over evidence or choosing the simpler, rational outcome over classifying the unclassifiable. We see this with the occasional comment between Principal Snyder and the local police, with veiled references to the mayor suggesting there is more going on behind the scenes, which, of course, is true, as we see in Buffy Season 3, when the mayor of Sunnydale is revealed to be the big bad. The few humans who do discover the truth often pay for it. Some, like Jenny Calendar, try to assist in the fight against vampires, namely Angelus, but are tragically destroyed for their knowledge. Others, like Joyce Summers, live in blissful ignorance before painfully accepting the truth when her daughter reveals that her job is to fight them. To be fair, the following season she does come round and is very supportive of Buffy's sacred calling, with only a few hiccups, like that time she tried to protect the town by burning her alive. Admittedly, that was under a spell. It's even mentioned by Amy Mann, the musician guest star, as she casually quips that she hates playing vampire towns due to a scuffle that took place during her set. In the second season, we see that a group of vampire wannabes meet regularly as a glorified fan club and are aware that vampires exist, but are completely ignorant of the danger they posed. They called them the Lonely Ones and viewed them as misunderstood outsiders. That illusion was shattered when Spike and his gang attacked, forcing Buffy to step in and save those she could. And then there are those who embrace it instantly. For example, Buffy's old friend from LA, Ford, in that specific episode I mentioned, knows about them and secretly wants to become one to avoid death by cancer. Another example of this is in Angel the series. When she first met Angel, the in-universe famous actress Rebecca Lowell held a similarly romanticised view of vampires and became fascinated by the possibilities that immortality offered, particularly as a way to preserve her career indefinitely. She initially believed that vampires had full control over their instincts. That illusion was of course shattered when she encountered Angelus, whose casual brutality, including describing how he would decapitate her and display her head on a pike after killing someone famous, left her visibly terrified and changed her mind on becoming a vampire. Elsewhere in Sunnydale, there was also a vampire den where humans could pay to be bitten, seeking the euphoric rush that came with vampire blood sucking, the drug metaphor also being very front and centre, as well as the negative perception of sex work. Riley Finn, Buffy's then boyfriend in the 5th season, became a regular patron until Buffy discovered it and burned it down in retaliation. This is the most explicit version of the idea that is common in vampire fiction, that the vampire bite isn't painful and is actually considered a pleasurable experience. It highlights that vampires can drink in controlled amounts that leave their victims alive, but normally this would be applied as torture or to prolong the agony of death. The fact this den exists also suggests there is an ecosystem of humans willing to pay for this service. Local butchers or business people in underworld dealings were also likely aware of the supernatural, as many were willing to trade with vampires when it comes to selling blood, or look the other way at least. You see, in the Buffyverse, vampires subsist exclusively on mammalian blood, with human blood being the most prized, but not strictly necessary. Many vampires feed on animals, rats, pigs, even otters, with pig's blood becoming a common substitute, sold openly through butcher shops or served at demon bars like Willie's Place. Angel and Spike both rely on it at various points, storing it in refrigerators like any other perishable food. Others turn to bottled or bagged human blood, stolen from hospitals or acquired through underground channels. It's the kind of narrative logic that makes the setting work for the show, but also comments on how societies ignore their own rot until it's undeniable. It plays into the show's larger metaphor. Vampires in Buffy are monsters, yes, but they're also the hidden realities people refuse to face. Predation, violence, the same instinct that lets Sunnydale citizens ignore nightly bloodshed, mirrors how in real life communities rationalise the darker side of society when acknowledging it would force action. In Buffy, it's easier to believe gangs on PCP than demons in the dark. Interestingly, this aspect is starkly different to older vampire lore in the real world. As mentioned in my previous video, in real life, 18th century Europe, Entire villages would unearth bodies and destroy them, convinced they were responsible for plague or famine. The fear spread like infection, what scholars later called the Great Vampire Epidemic. In Buffy, the pendulum swings the other way. Instead of hysteria, there's apathy. The world has become so saturated with horror that people have learned not to see it. Both versions, panic and denial, speak the same truth. When faced with the unnatural, humanity finds a way to protect itself psychologically, even if that means surrendering reality. Of course, there are hints that this blindness isn't purely psychological. The Hellmouth itself might exert a kind of psychic pressure, dulling awareness, bending perception, encouraging forgetfulness. Giles occasionally alludes to Sunnydale's unique energies, and the show treats the town as a magnet for evil and ignorance. Even when events spill into the open, they rarely travel beyond city limits. The result is a kind of coexistence. Humans and vampires occupy the same spaces, share the same streets, and sometimes even work together or have relationships. But the line between them is sustained by willful blindness on one side and opportunism on the other. However, the situation changed drastically in the comics. After the events of the Angel finale and the initial comics, vampires were exposed to the public in late Season 8, largely thanks to Harmony Kendall, who capitalised on being captured biting celebrity Andy Dick. She thus became a celebrity herself and starred in her own reality TV show Harmony Bites, that openly featured her as a vampire. Instead of sparking panic, her fame normalised vampirism, turning it into a trend complete with fandoms and human vampire subcultures. Harmony hilariously became a major advocate of the reform vampirism movement, which promoted ethical feeding, with vampires drinking only from willing humans and never taking enough blood to kill or sire. In opposition was the Vampire Supremacism group, whose adherents viewed humans as livestock and sought a return to a time before Harmony's public exposure of vampire society. Of course, as attacks by zompires became more frequent, which were mindless vampires created after the collapse of magic and briefly explored in my previous video, public tolerance quickly eroded. Fear replaced fascination, prompting the San Francisco Police Department to establish a dedicated supernatural task force to deal with the escalating threat. But that brief public acceptance fractured the old dynamic. Vampires became media personalities, activists, or influencers, while humans debated their rights on television. What was once a hidden threat became pop culture phenomenon and fundamentally changed how the Buffyverse society viewed the undead. Of course, as established earlier, before this drastic change, the world was largely ignorant of their existence. That secrecy set the stage for those who hunt the vampire, which brings us neatly to our next topic, the Slayer. If you've watched my previous videos, you'll be familiar with the Slayer lore, so I won't go too in depth here and more look at it from the perspective of the vampire. To the average vampire, the Slayer is the boogeyman for the undead. In a world where vampires are the apex predators, the Slayer is the reversal of that idea, the creature that stalks them and is the thing of nightmares. For the newly risen, she's a warning. For some ancient ones, she's a challenge. Many vampires make sure to avoid the Slayer, like Darla and Angelus, for example. Others, like Spike, see her as the ultimate test of their power. Either way, she occupies a mythic space in vampire society, and killing a Slayer and drinking her blood is regarded as a massive accomplishment. This can be seen with Spike, who killed 2 Slayers in less than 150 years of existence, which made him an infamous figure among vampires and watchers alike. In the Buffyverse, the Slayer and the vampire exist in permanent opposition, hunter and hunted, but that relationship is more complicated than simple good versus evil. They are sort of bound by similar origins. Both trace their power to demonic essence, and one defines the other's purpose. From the beginning, the Slayer's calling was a response to vampirism. As we established in the previous video, when the Old One Malaker's vampiric army swept the land, the world needed balance, and so the Shadow Men created the Slayer, infusing a young girl with demonic strength to fight what humans could not. The result was a champion human empowered by demon essence, created to destroy these corrupted human bodies also possessed by demon essence. This shared origin explains the strange intimacy that develops between Slayers and vampires. They recognize something familiar in each other, 2 halves of an ancient equation. Buffy's relationships with Angel and Spike make this explicit, but even in battle, there's an undercurrent of connection. Buffy's relationship with Angel is the clearest embodiment of that paradox, a vampire cursed with a soul. Angel's existence forces Buffy to confront what her calling actually means. If a vampire can love, can atone, can choose good, then what exactly separates them? It's the same question the series returns to again and again. Is evil intrinsic or chosen? With Spike, that question becomes even murkier. He seeks his soul voluntarily, which is very different to Angel, who had to be cursed to regain his, and the result blurs the Slayer's moral boundaries even further. This is a discussion point I have seen occasionally presented by Buffy fans on forums, the idea that the vampire can be good, like demons such as Clem or Lorne, and therefore vampire hunters such as the Slayer are inherently racist or bigoted for not immediately giving them a chance. It's definitely a topic for another video, but to add my own thoughts, as I said earlier, it's more likely that Spike is an anomaly on the show, and even in his less evil era, he is still capable of horrendous acts, which make it harder to argue that vampires are redeemable without souls. Of course, I would love to hear your thoughts on this, as I will be tackling this in more detail and always appreciate hearing other perspectives. Anyway, these relationships also mirror the tension between power and empathy. The Slayer's strength is meant to preserve humanity, but her role isolates her from it. Vampires, meanwhile, represent unrestrained desire, the temptation to use power for personal will. Every fight between the two carries that subtext, control versus surrender. In the extended lore, this bond takes on new dimensions. The concept of the Slaypire, a slayer turned into a vampire, has been explored in comics and fan theory, but never fully realised on screen. Well, at least outside of the Buffy episode Nightmares, where Buffy dreams of becoming a vampire. In the Tales of the Slayer Volume 4, the story titled Undeadville explores the tragic ending for the Slayer Zoe Kuriakin, who is betrayed by her watcher Sykes when she thinks she is being given a slight medicinal cure for her exhaustion from the pre-cruciamentum drugging effects. Unbeknownst to her, he lies and puts her to sleep, then allows a vampire to enter and turn her into a Slaypire. When she awakens as a vampire, we get a glimpse into the mindset of the newly arisen vampire, but also one that has the Slayer strengths and abilities. Here's a small section from it immediately after Zoe has killed her sire, the vampire Faust, and is now trying to decide what to do with Sykes. Disgust overwhelms me. You sold me out, I whisper to him. You gave me to that vampire, and for what? Your goddamn books? No, it wasn't like that. It was, I ought to kill you, Sykes. But you did help me out with Foss. It's the only reason that I'm going to let... I stop. My gaze is fixed on his arm. When he hit the wall, he must have skinned it. It's bleeding. Not much, but it doesn't take much. I turn toward the door. I intend to just throw him out into the street like the trash he is. But instead I feed. I can't help it. The howling thing inside me takes over, suddenly, completely and totally. I bury my teeth in his neck, the arteries visible from a block away, no missing it, and I drink his blood. Nothing has ever tasted so good. The world dissolves in red mist. When I come to myself again, the first thing I realise is that the soft grey light of dawn is filling the open doorway. The second thing is that Sykes is dead. I let him fall to the floor. I'm full of his blood. Whatever Mickey he slipped me was wiped away by the turning, but it almost feels like it's back now. I'm sluggish, drowsy. The day is coming, and I want nothing more than to find a dark hole somewhere, curl up in it, and sleep. I look down at the body of my watcher. I try to feel something. Anything. I can't. Is it because he made a deal with a demon to kill me? Or is it because I'm a demon now? Because there's no denying it. The hunger in me is satisfied. For now. But it'll be back. I know this. Just like I know I won't be able to resist it again. Just like I know that my hold on my soul is slipping. My Slayer strength has let me hang on to myself for this long. But how much longer can I keep the demon within me at bay? And when? I can't. At first it seems like her Slayer power allows her to resist the seduction of killing humans, but ultimately she succumbs and embraces the need for human blood when she kills Sykes, the traitor who sold her out. It's a nasty ending, but it also gives an interesting perspective of the initial battle within her head, as it's inferred that the Slayer's demonic essence is overpowered by the vampiric inner demon. But even in cases like Zoe's, where Slayer strength and vampiric instinct collide, the end result serves as a reminder of a simple truth. For all their variations, all vampires are still bound to the same cycle. They rise through death, and they usually end in it. Whether they're ordinary fledglings, ancient masters, or rare hybrids like Slaypires, their existence always circles back to that final moment, when the demon is driven out and the body turns to dust. And with that, it's time to look at one last cornerstone of vampire lore in the Buffyverse, what it truly means for a vampire to die, and a few extraordinary circumstances in which one might return. For a creature that already died once, vampires in the Buffyverse have a remarkably dramatic second death. When a vampire is killed, whether by stake, sunlight, fire, or decapitation, their body collapses into dust within seconds. Clothes, flesh, and bone disintegrate in one swift release, often marked by a distinctive shriek and that familiar dusting sound fans know so well. Most of the time, anything that is touching or piercing the vampire at the moment of death dusts along with them. Stakes, shovel handles, improvised weapons. If it's embedded in the heart when the vampire expires, it usually goes too. This rule, however, has its inconsistencies. Larger objects, like the wooden beam that killed Kakistos, remain intact. Rings are another notable exception. Giles recovers a ring from the Order of Aurelius after the wearer's death, and Buffy's dream of Angel turning to dust shows his rings falling through his fingers as they disintegrate. The dusting effect has an in-universe logic. Nothing remains because the demon animating the corpse has fled or been extinguished, but it also served a practical purpose for the show. No bodies, no evidence, and no weekly corpse cleanup for Sunnydale PD. So here's a question. What happens to the demon upon death? The show never answers this outright, but the implications are interesting. If the demon is extra-dimensional, dusting may sever its link to the physical world, sending it back to wherever it originated, if anything remains of it at all. The Vantal, glimpsed in Pylea, which I covered in my previous video, suggests these demons are primitive, instinct-driven entities. When the host is destroyed, they may simply disperse, cease to exist, or be cast into a hellish pocket dimension for eternal torment. In any case, once a vampire is dusted, nothing of the human or demon remains. I guess a fitting end for a creature that was never truly alive. But then we have the next question. Can vampires be resurrected? Well, yes, according to both shows and the extended universe lore. Despite the finality of dusting, vampires can return, though doing so is rare, difficult, and often tied to powerful magic. At the beginning of the second season, the Anointed One attempted to resurrect the Master using his remaining bones. Yes, the Master had bones, seemingly due to his age, requiring the blood of those present at his death. Buffy and the others intervened, destroying the skeleton and preventing the ritual's completion. Darla's resurrection in Angel is one of the most significant examples. The morally bereft law firm, Wolfram and Hart, perform a ritual involving the sacrifice of 5 vampires, which restored her not as a vampire, but as a living human, one who had to be turned again when her previous syphilis illness returned. Spike's return was stranger still in Angel Season 5. His spirit was bound to an amulet after his death at the Battle of the Hellmouth in Buffy's finale, manifesting as a ghost before being fully restored to physical form later in the series. Finally, during the Twilight arc in the comics, the Master was revived once more, this time by the Seed of Wonder, and he acted as its guardian, only to be killed again in the ensuing battle. Interestingly, vampires can also be turned human, as we see in the first season of Angel when he is touched by Mora demon blood, which magically changes him back. It's a particularly heartbreaking episode, as he ultimately makes the choice to revert time backwards, even giving up a happy, fulfilling life with Buffy to save her from potential death. Another episode shows that a vampire's heart can be brought back to life, briefly with electrocution, as we see in the later seasons of Angel when Gwen Raiden uses her strong electrokinesis on Angel. Under rare circumstances, vampires can achieve temporary or even sustained invulnerability to their usual weaknesses. The most well-known example is the Gem of Amara, an ancient artifact that granted complete immunity to sunlight, stakes, and most conventional means of destruction, allowing its wearer to walk freely in daylight. This protection, however, was external and finite. Once the gem was destroyed, the vampire was returned to their natural limitations. Other methods were more invasive. One procedure involved removing a vampire's heart entirely and sustaining the body through mystical infusions, rendering them inhuman to traditional killing methods for a fixed 6-hour window. When that time elapsed, the body immediately dusted, as though the accumulated damage caught up all at once. A later refinement of this process replaced the heart with an artificial substitute, granting near-permanent invulnerability, though with obvious caveats. Decapitation still worked, and damage to the artificial heart could prove fatal. Finally, there are exceptional cases tied to apocalyptic forces, such as Angel's brief transformation in the comics as the host of Twilight, during which he possessed absolute invulnerability and abilities far beyond any ordinary vampire. Even then, this state was conditional, disrupted by proximity to powerful artifacts like the Seed of Wonder. Taken together, these examples reinforce a recurring theme in the Buffyverse. Vampiric invulnerability is never natural, never stable, and always comes at a cost. The vampire is such an interesting creature, and it's no wonder there were a boom of vampire shows not long after Buffy finished its run. The series began with them as the big bads with the likes of the Master and Angelus, but ultimately, as the show went on, they were demoted mostly to minions of bigger villains, or even served as pure comic relief. This makes sense to some extent when there is a desire for escalation in the stakes, and we have seen Buffy killing vampires from the first episode. But I also would love the vampire to have more focus and be treated as a serious threat again if the revival series is greenlit. I have mentioned in my previous videos, and I stand by it. As much as the Slaypire is quite a silly name, the concept of the Slayer turned into a vampire to me would be fascinating. So Chloe Zhao and Sarah Michelle Gellar, if you're watching, let's consider that direction. Okay, that wraps up today's video. We've covered a lot here in both videos, and I hope this has given a good understanding of the various facets of vampire lore within the Buffyverse. I would love to hear your thoughts on the various aspects we've explored, and I plan to return with another video around fan theories on the show's vampire mythology next time. So comment below with your theories and headcanons for possible reference, and with that, I'll see you in the next video.